This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Gunmen on motorbikes killed 22 in Nigeria village raid. Mozambique battles armed group controlling a resource-rich town. And the World Health Organization calls for equal access to COVID-19 vaccines in Africa. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe, also lined up this hour. In business, Ghanaian court dismisses MTN's challenge against market regulator. And in sports, Uganda mulls restarting sporting activities without fans. We begin in Nigeria, where gunmen have killed at least 22 people in the central state of Niger. Most of the casualties are from local vigilante groups and police officers. The groups were formed to protect residents following a series of clashes and attacks by militants. The state security coordinator said the gunmen were thought to have been planning to kidnap residents, and they arrived on motorbikes in the town of Duku in Rijau area. Armed criminal gangs have frequently carried out killings, lootings and kidnappings for ransom in Niger State. Combined efforts of security forces and local vigilantes have failed to end the violence so far. Now, the situation in northern Mozambique continues to deteriorate. In August, jihadi militants seized Mocimboa da Praia, a key port city on the Indian Ocean coast. The government has called on its Southern African neighbors to help it fend off the escalating jihadist insurgency. Since 2017, over 1,500 people have been killed by the Islamist group, and some 200,000 have fled the gas-rich northern province of Cabo Delgado. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
There's not much left in towns like Mocimboa da Praia and Macomia. The scars of 16 years of civil war are still present, but now the enemy is a different one.
We have a group of armed young people. They invaded the town of Mocimboa da Praia. They took over, government buildings and police buildings, and eventually the town was retaken by the military. And since then, we have seen this continuous, series of attacks and counterattacks and clashes between the government forces and these rebel groups.
Mocimboa da Praia, which has become now the center of the insurgency, was taken over for almost 2 weeks. The city has been controlled by the insurgents. The port is controlled by the insurgents. We're learning some good news, I think yesterday and today, that the government is making progress in terms of taking back the city from the insurgents.
Security officials have struggled to contain the attacks. Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi has called for international help to fight militants.
I'm seeing the Mozambique government increasingly accept that this is a war situation. President Filipe Nyusi has said this past weekend that he's ready to ask for help internationally if he decides that Mozambique needs it. It is becoming increasingly important and it's becoming a regional issue.
Mozambique on its own, with its own defense force, cannot handle what's happening in Cabo Delgado. The entire SADC, must put its hands and heads together in order to deal with the situation in Mozambique, because this is not a Mozambican problem. It's a SADC problem. It's an African problem.
ExxonMobil and Total are among big international energy companies developing natural gas projects offshore from northern Mozambique, worth more than $60 billion. The violence could affect operations.
SADC should reconsider, the way it's been handling the situation in Mozambique. It's been clear from the beginning that Mozambique on its own is incapable at this stage to deal with this particular problem.
Mozambique's neighbors are watching with growing anxiety.
We call for that humanitarian intervention, and also to make sure that we don't give opportunity to the insurgents. We cannot see another region, another country in Southern Africa fall victim. If we take good action now, I'm sure we'll be able to defeat the insurgents and reinstall peace and order in northern Mozambique.
Whatever SADC leaders and international community decide, security experts have warned that their plan must include the safety of civilians and provide humanitarian aid to the affected population in Cabo Delgado. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
The European Union is concerned that despite a UN arms embargo, weapons were still reaching Libya. It has warned that these developments would hamper ongoing peace efforts in the North African country. In March, the EU approved a mission in the Mediterranean Sea aimed at enforcing the UN arms embargo on Libya.
From our side, we try to control the arms embargo as much as we can, but we are perfectly aware that the flows of arms continue reaching Libya, and as far as this continues, it's going to be quite difficult to stop the fight.
In Guinea, clashes between police and protesters have erupted in the capital, Conakry, after President Alpha Condé announced he will be running for a third term. Tens of thousands of Guineans are against another term for Condé. They have been holding anti-government demonstrations since March. That is when a public referendum reset the presidential term limits, allowing Condé to run for the presidency. The vote has been widely condemned as not credible. The 82-year-old became Guinea's first democratically elected president in 2010. On Thursday, he filed papers before the Constitutional Court to extend his stay in power. He insists he is following the will of the people following the referendum. The presidential polls are set for the 18th of October.
This is the situation since the Guinean president Alpha Condé says he is going to extend his term. That is why the youth are protesting for the alternate in power, because Guinea is for all of us. But we are all Guineans, and that is why there is a protest here.
China has marked the 75th anniversary of the victory over Japan in World War II and the victory of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression. Former Nigerian military spokesperson Sani Usman says the victory demonstrates China's spirit of resistance that helped end the Second World War.
We know this is very significant not only to the Chinese people but to world peace and security generally. They have one of the most resilient people in the world. So they have all that it takes, to get what actually they want for their people. I think you are having one of the best militaries in the world as it is today. There is a kind of mutual relationship, having common experience, and looking up to you people, the Chinese people, how you were able to, resist the aggression and move forward to the point where China is today. It's having one of the most developed economics in the world, and so many other things.
To Lebanon now, where rescue workers in the capital Beirut continued to dig through the rubble of a collapsed building Friday, a day after signs of life were detected. This happened 1 month after an explosion shattered the Lebanese capital. The rescue workers painstakingly combed through debris in the residential district of Gemazi. According to the rescue workers, they detected signs of a pulse and breathing on Thursday. The August 4th explosion at the port that killed 190 people was caused by badly stored ammonium nitrate. CGTN's Yuma Nofal joins us for an update. Yuma, there are signs of life under Beirut rubble 1 month after the explosion. What is the latest?
So, to tell you a little bit about this rescue operation, Chilean rescue workers, along with Lebanese civil defense team members, started yesterday at around 9 a.m. So, we're about 28 hours in. They did stop yesterday at 11:30 p.m. and resumed just at the break of dawn. The Chilean rescue teams are being aided by a dog called Flash, and the dog, they say, detected some form of life under the rubble. They do believe there is another body believed to be deceased under the rubble, so 2 bodies, one that could potentially miraculously a month after hold a sign of life, and one believed to be deceased. This rescue operation is in the heart of one of the main, it was a really not up and coming, it was a really, I don't know how to say it in other words. It was really a place where a lot of young people gathered to go drinking, to go out. It had a bursting nightlife, and it was really very close to the port, and it's been completely shattered. And the building where right now rescue teams are searching under the rubble is one of the main buildings in that city. So this is as far as it stands right now.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Yumna Nofal, live for us there in Beirut. Now, U.S. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has made his first campaign trip of the general election. He traveled to Kenosha, Wisconsin on Thursday to address a city racked by protests. Biden also met with the family of Jacob Blake, the black man shot 7 times in the back and left paralyzed by police last month. Dan Williams reports.
Was one of unity. He met with family members of Jacob Blake Sr., Jacob's father, as well as the brothers and sisters of Jacob Blake as well, the mother joining on a phone call. That meeting took around an hour before he then came here to this church that's in central Kenosha. He met with leaders of Kenosha, business owners, as well as police as well. He listened to what they had to say, what their thoughts were on the events of the last week or so, before he then had his chance to give his thoughts, where he talked about that this is not who America is. He compared racial unrest in the 1960s, how helpless that looked then, and then fast forwarding to 2009 and the presidency of Barack Obama, saying that if they've done it once, they can do it again. This is what he had to say.
Well, I think we've reached an inflection point in American history. I honest to God believe we have an enormous opportunity now that the screen, the curtain's been pulled back on just what's going on in the country, to do a lot of really positive things.
Well, Biden's message, in a way, is in contrast to that of President Trump and his visit here on Tuesday. There on Tuesday, Trump's message was all about how he is the president for law and order, how he started to describe some protesters as being domestic terrorists. He met with law enforcement, he met with business owners impacted by the protests, but not, of course, with Jacob Blake's family. As I say, real contrast to the visit that we've seen from Joe Biden. How well that plays out in the polls, well, that remains to be seen in just, 2 months from now in the presidential election, as to which of the narratives will really resonate with voters. Dan Williams for CGTN, Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Let's take you back to Nigeria, where gunmen have killed at least 22 people in the central state of Niger. Most of the casualties are from local vigilante groups and police officers. The groups were formed to protect residents following a series of clashes and attacks by militants. Now let's get more from CGTN's Deji Badmas, who's live for us in Lagos. Deji, what is the latest on that raid in Nigeria's central state of Niger?
Well, the area that was attacked is now calm. There's calm in the area. Security forces have now been deployed to the local government and the community where the attack happened. So the government says it has the situation under control and that it's actually going to ensure that those who carried out the attack are brought to justice. But at the moment, of course, the people are now burying their dead, and they're getting assurances from the government that security will be improved around the area. But, you know, it's a kind of response we've actually seen from the government. So it's actually not the first time attacks of that nature would be happening in that north-central state. It appears to be fast becoming the epicenter of banditry attack, especially in the north-central region of Nigeria. So for now, the people are burying their dead, and of course they're in mourning, but then assurances from the government that things are under control.
Okay, but then again, Deji, you mentioned these attacks have become more frequent in that area. So why is the government seemingly unable to bring to an end this violence?
It's quite a tough one for the government. First of all, we have to understand that north-central state, Niger. It's actually the largest state in terms of landmass now in Nigeria. It's very difficult to police the entire state. So you have quite a number of ungoverned spaces in that state where you basically do not have security agents. As a matter of fact, government presence is nearly absent in quite a number of these places. And it's this situation that the bandits are taking advantage of. For instance, in this place where this attack happened, it's a very remote area. And obviously, the bandits know that security presence in that area is quite lax, and that it would take some time before there's a response. And then they were able to carry out this attack and left the area before that response by the security agents comes. So it's a tough one. Another huge challenge that the Nigerian government has, of course, is the fact that its military is really, really stressed out. It's fighting Boko Haram, insurgency in the northeast, fighting banditry in the north central, northwest, and then you have problems in the south as well. So it's a tough one, and that's why the government says it wants to recruit more security personnel in the coming months.
All right, so let's cross over to neighboring Cameroon, Deji. At least 7 people have been killed, 14 others wounded during an attack in the north of the country by suspected Islamist militants on a settlement. What more details can you give us on that?
Well, 2 attacks actually happened in the north of Cameroon. That's the far north of Cameroon, near Kolofata. Kolofata now borders Nigeria and Cameroon, and then close to Chad as well. And it's not the first time that these insurgents will be carrying out attacks in that area. We are not particularly sure which sect of Boko Haram now carried out the attack, whether it's actually the main Boko Haram or ISWAP. But one of the attacks clearly was targeted because the insurgents actually targeted a local community chief now, where 1 person was killed. And then this IDP camp that was attacked where, well, what we're learning is that over 7 persons were actually killed and that it was a suicide bomber. As a matter of fact, we understand people were fleeing from the camp, but this suicide bomber ran after them and then blew himself up, killing several people in the process. Of course, security personnel have been deployed to that area, but one thing I should say, Peninah, is that that area is also not well governed, and it's one of the reasons why we continue to see attacks of that nature now in that region. But then we're being joined by Kabiru Adamu, our security expert based here in Nigeria, to shed more light on security situation, not just in Nigeria, but across the Sahel. Kabiru, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, security situation in Nigeria seems to be worsening. What do you think is the problem?
In simple terms, it's the depreciation or the decreasing socioeconomic conditions across the country, where poverty is on the increase. We seem to be approaching a recession. A lot of people have been out of job. The security forces are stretched beyond their traditional functions. The COVID-19 protocols has also been added to their traditional functions. Then, of course, governance too is also being affected by the economic circumstances surrounding COVID-19. Funding for a lot of projects and policies of government are no longer available. So I think it's all of this, both political and socioeconomic circumstances, as well as the increasing politicization of a lot of issues across the country that has led to this deterioration in security.
Now, we also know that it's not only Nigeria that has insecurity issues. The situation in the Sahel region is also very bad. Why has the Sahel regional security strategy failed? Because, I mean, there in that region, you have the G5 Sahel force, you have the Takuba force that was set up not quite long ago. But despite all of these strategies, you also have, of course, the French troops in that region. But you look at all of these strategies, everything seems to have failed.
The same conditions that I've mentioned that are affecting Nigeria, unfortunately, are conditions that are also manifest in other parts of the Sahel. So high illiteracy, unemployment, very debilitating socioeconomic conditions. And then beyond that, it's very difficult really to speak of a Sahel security strategy. One does not exist. There are several strategies, and sometimes these strategies are actually conflicting with one another. As an example, it is inconceivable that there is a multinational joint task force and then there is the G5. Two countries that are in the multinational joint task force are also in the G5. So it beats me that the two have not been collapsed into one, especially when both challenged with funding issues. None of them is able to stand on its own in terms of funding. Then when we speak of France, in spite of the troops it has, almost about 5,000 across the Sahel, there is no coherent strategy in terms of what it's trying to achieve vis-a-vis what the United States as well as the EU and UK is trying to achieve. Sometimes you get conflicting messages from these world powers. As an example, after the Malian coup, the EU came out to suspend training and other support interventions within Mali, but France brought out a statement that it's going to retain its troops in Mali, and of course France is a part of the EU. So those type of conflicting messaging, unfortunately, is not helpful for, as it were, the security strategy in the Sahel.
But very quickly now, what do you think is the best way of tackling insecurity in Nigeria and the Sahel region as a whole?
Number one is improved governance. A lot of politicking goes on around improved governance. I don't have to go into details on that, but improved governance. The second one is coordination in terms of the military strategy. The borders are very porous. There is a high level of small arms and weapon proliferation within the region. So improved governance, better border management policies that would limit the flow of the small arms and light weapons, and then of course an improvement in the military as well as security strategy by various countries. And then once those various countries improve their military and security strategy, then there is a need for coordination between them as a whole, especially as it affects the sub-region.
All right, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, security expert, thanks for your time there. Well, Peninah, it's quite a terrible situation in the Sahel and, of course, in Nigeria as well, as far as insecurity goes. And it appears the challenges in the Sahel are somehow similar to the challenges we have here, just as Dr. Adamu has actually painted. Back to you now in the studio.
Well, Deji, thank you very much for that update and those insights with your guest. We appreciate that. Deji Badmas live in Lagos. And this is Africa Live. We're taking a short break straight ahead. The World Health Organization calls for equal access to COVID-19 vaccines in Africa. And social distancing poses challenges for Kenya's public transport industry.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
The World Health Organization has urged donors and industry to allocate sufficient resources to ensure that African countries have access to a safe, affordable and effective COVID-19 vaccine. During a virtual briefing in Nairobi, WHO officials say the needs and aspirations of African countries should be at the heart of the ongoing global efforts to develop vaccines against the coronavirus pandemic. The WHO has confirmed that all of the 54 African countries have signed up to COVAX. The global vaccine allocation plan aims to help buy and fairly distribute 2 billion doses of approved vaccines by the end of 2021.
Once there is a vaccine that is licensed and approved, COVAX will work to secure at least 220 million doses of vaccine for the continent. This will not necessarily cover all the needs of the continent, but at least will cover 20% of the African population, initially prioritizing those who are at the front line, the healthcare workers, then expanding to cover vulnerable groups such as the elderly or those with a pre-existing condition.
I believe there are 9 vaccines that have now entered the last stage of clinical testing, phase 3 clinical trials. Many more vaccines, probably over 35 at this point, have entered human clinical trials, and they are being tested in a number of settings globally. And it is important to test vaccines in different populations because there can be different responses among different populations.
The Egyptian Ministry of Supply is distributing face masks alongside monthly food rations. The move aims to reinforce the government's COVID-19 preventive policies. The masks are not for free. Their cost is deducted from the ration card's balance. CGTN's Adel Mahroui has the details.
The Egyptian Ministry of Supply has started distributing cloth face masks with the monthly rations for subscribed citizens. Every family of 4 or more must get 2 masks monthly, the cost of which will be deducted from the ration card's balance. For families with 3 or less members, the masks are optional.
هو الوزارة كانت بتصرف بشكل اختياري
The ministry used to give an option of dispatching 2 face masks every month on ration cards. But in the light of recent measures taken by the government and the many violations by citizens to abide by personal preventive measures in public transportation and other places, it was forced to take this decision because daily infection rates are once again going up.
The cloth masks are durable for up to 30 washes. Each is sold at a subsidized price of 54 US cents. That saves $7 of the budget citizens need monthly to buy the disposable medical face masks. Yet for many rations benefactors, it's still a lot of money.
I have 4 kids, my wife and sister living with me. I need to get them 7 masks once or twice a day. That's up to $4. That's a lot of money. I have other priorities. Take rations. It means I can't afford other stuff. I need the stamps. Food will always come first, even before masks. The government should provide them for free.
I didn't expect that face masks would be distributed on the ration cards. 50 cents is a lot of money. If I get one, what about the rest of my family? From where can I get money for the rest of us?
The Ministry of Supply is now requesting 28 million masks monthly from suppliers. That's up from 12 million in July. 400 clothes factories are now certified to produce these cloth face masks. With minimum wages set to $126 monthly, every dollar counts for many Egyptians. Most people cannot afford the budget needed for face masks. But now that the Ministry of Supply is providing a more affordable solution, the government is hoping that more people will abide to its COVID-19 preventive regulations. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, public transport plays a key role in keeping Nairobi's economy moving. That's why privately owned minibuses, also known as matatus, are essential for many people. But measures introduced to curb the spread of the coronavirus have proved challenging for the matatu industry workers. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has that story.
Evans Murevi is a bus conductor in the bustling streets of Nairobi. He dances and performs acrobatic stunts to entertain customers and to attract more. Now that it's back to business and matatus are ferrying commuters from place to place again, it's up to the bus conductors to ensure measures to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus are observed.
I have to sanitize my hands to protect myself. Before I begin my shift, I have to sanitize all the handles in the matatu. I have to put on a mask at all times because some customers may refuse to board the matatu if I lack one.
Enforcing the rules comes with its own challenges.
We've tried to sanitize people, we scan the temperature as the passengers board the vehicles. But the challenge comes here when some passengers ignore, they don't accept, they don't wear the mask, so that's been a challenge.
In a bid to ensure that social distancing is observed inside the matatus, the government proposed the reduction of the carrying capacity by half. A seat that would formerly carry 2 people is now occupied by only 1 passenger.
We used to carry a capacity of 32 passengers, but for now it's reduced to 15 passengers according to distance, social distancing. And this has caused us loss, plus the passengers too are suffering because of the fare charge that we have a little bit increased.
The restrictions have significantly affected the revenues earned by matatu owners. Their operating hours were also reduced due to a curfew that the government imposed. The matatu operators also have to cover the extra expenses of buying hand and surface sanitizers. But the Kenyan government has warned operators against increasing bus fares, so as to cushion commuters who are already facing economic hardships due to the pandemic. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Meanwhile, South Africa's National Health Department has launched a new mobile application to strengthen its digital contact tracing efforts. COVID Alert South Africa is a free exposure notification app. By tracking smartphone proximity, the app is able to warn users who could have been exposed to someone who has COVID-19. CGTN's Ulisa Njamela has more.
South Africa has been using manual contact tracing methods like home visits and phone calls to alert those known to have been exposed to a COVID-19 patient. But there's a new weapon that has been unleashed now in the fight against COVID-19, an app called COVID Alert SA. It provides another crucial layer to contact tracing.
One of the great challenges that we have is we often move around but have no idea about the people that we're interacting with and what risk that may pose. So to combat the break in the chain of transmission, as we interact with people, we need to have some sense about who it is that may potentially have COVID and may be able to transmit it to us.
When a user tests positive, they are requested to report their diagnosis anonymously in the app. All other users with whom they have been in contact for the past 14 days will immediately be notified of their exposure. COVID Alert SA relies on Bluetooth technology to track proximity between smartphones. It operates on an entirely anonymous basis with no identifiers.
It's basically an automated notification of proximity to a person infected with COVID. So if you're in contact with somebody who's infected, it will alert you. It will also provide privacy prioritized and protected so that your information is not shared with other people.
I have been through the app in detail with the developers, and I am entirely satisfied that it is sufficiently anonymized to make anybody who is nervous about their privacy infringement not be worried, because it is anonymized. They don't collect any of your personal information. No name, no email address, no phone number, no location is collected or stored.
Downloading the app requires 3 megabytes. Thereafter, it is 0 rated, meaning it will not cost you anything to use. It is available on Google Play and iStore, and developers are currently looking at other platforms to ensure that it is available there as well. Government believes that this latest invention provides additional armament to achieve suppression of the virus and prevent outbreaks from occurring again by eliminating the time-consuming steps it takes to achieve contact tracing manually.
It's a time now where South Africans must take charge, but also it's up to them now to actually be part of the solution in terms of ensuring that we are able to contain the infections.
The COVID Alert SA app is now available for free download. Ulisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live, coming up in business news. Ghana court dismisses MTN's challenge against market regulator. And cash-strapped South Sudan seeking $250 million loan to boost economy.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects
to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
A high court in Ghana has dismissed the local MTN unit's challenge to a move by the National Telecommunications Regulator aimed at exposing it to greater competition. In June, MTN appealed a decision by the National Communications Authority to designate it a significant market power, a move that requires the regulator to take corrective action. But in a September 1st decision, the court dismissed the company's application. MTN said it maintained its position that the NCA's decision was unfair from a procedural standpoint and would explore all available options and next steps in this process. Statistics from the NCA showed MTN's share in mobile data subscriptions accounted for almost 70% of the market from January to March. Cash-strapped South Sudan is seeking a $250 million loan to rescue it from financial ruin. The government says it's in talks with the African Export-Import Bank in a bid to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the economy and support food security. The move comes 2 weeks after the central bank admitted it had no more foreign reserves left. CGTN's Patrick Oyet has more.
South Sudan's government says the loan will be used to make up the shortfall in the country's revenues created by the pandemic. Juba says it has already prioritized where the money will go.
They're spending on limited expenses. So far, what is taking place now, we are spending merely, if there is money, we pay salaries. There's money, we pay for security items. If there's money, we pay for COVID-19 related expenses.
South Sudan's government gets almost all of its revenue from the sale of crude oil. However, oil output has plummeted to 175,000 barrels a day from 185,000 barrels per day due to the effects of COVID-19. Global oil price has also fallen. The Central Bank of South Sudan says it is looking for other alternative sources of revenue.
We want to diversify so that we don't depend on oil. Because when the oil price is like early this year, they went up to zero. So we couldn't even sell our oil. So where do we pay the people? Where the Minister of Finance get the money?
South Sudan has been finding it difficult to access loans from international financial institutions because they have lost faith in the government's transparency. Juba says it is working to improve things.
The whole idea is that we are now working towards a more transparent system, which the community, the public, will be following from time to time.
The African Export-Import Bank is a pan-African multilateral trade finance institution created in 1993 under the auspices of the African Development Bank. Its purpose is the financing, promoting and expanding of intra-African and extra-African trade. South Sudan Central Bank says it is also buying gold from within the country to build its reserves and be able to have a long-lasting solution for the economy. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
The Speaker of Nigeria's House of Representatives is in Ghana for talks about the ongoing dispute between traders in the two countries. Femi Gbajabiamila is on a 2-day visit to meet with the Ghanaian government with a delegation of lawmakers from Nigeria. The aim is to find possible solutions to the traders' disputes. CGTN's Willie Haza reports from Nigeria's capital, Abuja.
Femi Gbajabiamila says he hopes that after meeting with his counterpart, the Speaker of Ghana's Parliament, Honorable Mike Okoye, they will arrive at a mutually acceptable resolution to tackle the ongoing crisis. There's been tensions between both countries since the Nigerian government closed its land borders in August last year to neighboring countries including Ghana in a bid to halt rice smuggling to the country. The government here says this was targeted at promoting locally produced rice in Nigeria, and experts here believe tensions may continue as long as Nigeria's borders remain shut to member countries within the economic community of West African state ECOWAS.
This is born out of struggle for space, for market, for customers. where the host countries believe, rightly or wrongly, that the foreigners who are actually supposed to be African brothers are there to usurp or take away what rightfully belongs to them. The Ghanaians might think that Nigeria has shortchanged them by shutting our borders with other ECOWAS countries.
The speakers been meeting with Nigerian traders in Ghana who believe they've been badly treated in the country despite being formally registered as foreign traders and paying all required taxes. The Ghanaian government says only shops belonging to foreign traders that don't have up-to-date or valid permits are affected. But here in Nigeria, there are strong feelings.
I don't expect such thing from Ghana, but you know, because of the nature of things in Nigeria, we have ridiculed ourselves before the entire world. So a lot of countries who are not supposed to even talk to us are taking advantage of our situation to just treat us anyhow.
Seeing the way Nigerians are being treated there is really, really unfair, and I think the government should take the necessary step to curb these kind of actions so that it doesn't spill over and we have a kind of retaliation from Nigerians over here.
The Nigerian government says it will no longer tolerate further acts of hostilities on its citizens and has demanded a stop to the alleged maltreatments. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Global credit rating agency Moody's has kept Egypt's credit rating at B2 with a stable outlook. This has been supported by the country's diversified economy and adequate forex reserves. Moody's said that Egypt had adopted policies that have kept inflation in check and maintained low interest rates for quicker economic recovery. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more details.
The economic reform program adopted by the North African nation in the last 4 years has reaped its rewards amid the crisis. Egypt is one of the few countries in the region that has managed to sustain itself during the economic fallout caused by COVID-19. Key among its success during the crisis has been the policies embraced by the central bank during the last few months, which have led to a major drop in inflation.
The proactive steps taken by the central bank at the outbreak of corona kept interest rates down, and this led to low inflation levels and prices. This helped the government provide all basic needs, food and products to the population without any delay and at affordable prices. Also, releasing huge funds to stimulate the economy has given support to several sectors in both the services and industrial sectors to continue operating, thus preventing higher unemployment rates.
One of the positive effects is the realization of a sustainable Egyptian currency. There is now enough foreign exchange reserves to cover 3 years and safe levels of external debt because of the low interest rates. But the focal point, according to Moody's, is the resilience of the Egyptian economy.
It's known that Egypt's economy is diverse. For example, we have several sources of hard currency: tourism, Suez Canal, remittances and exports. Some have seen huge losses, but others made up for it, limiting the damage. Another aspect is the drop in international oil prices. This lifted the burden off the budget. With less expenses, foreign reserves stayed intact.
The International Credit Agency has not only praised the current situation, Moody's has forecast a strong performance on the medium term. It predicts an impressive economic growth of 5.5% next year, up from the current 3%. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The China International Fair for Trade in Services is the first major in-person trade event to be held in China since the COVID-19 outbreak, and its focus is on services. That's a growing sector in China, with imports and exports totaling just shy of $1 trillion last year. Here are more details on what the fair is about.
The China International Fair for Trade and Services is the largest comprehensive exhibition in the field of global trade in services. Launched in 2012 and formerly known as the Beijing Fair, the gathering has now become one of the 3 major exhibition platforms for China's opening up. The other 2 platforms are the China Import and Export Fair, known as the Canton Fair, and the China International Import Expo. Together, they send a strong signal to the world that China will continue to strengthen economic globalization and international cooperation. With the theme of Global Services, Shared Prosperity, this year's CIFTIS will be held in Beijing in early September, both online and offline, indoor and outdoor. In addition to a comprehensive exhibition, there will be 8 themed ones covering culture, finance, winter sports, tourism, education, sports, service robots, and 5G. There will also be multiple functional service segments, including experiencing activities, business salons, promotions, and different styled dining areas. Besides exhibitions, the event will also feature 4 summit forums and 100-plus themed forums, seminars, and matchmaking activities, which are also open to online participation.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead. In our continuing CGTN digital safari, we'll look at how Lalamba the leopard hunts her prey at the Mara River.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
In our continuing series of digital safari, we detail the adventure of leopard princess Lalamba as she trains her eyes on the prey.
Yesterday on CGTN's Digital Safari. In the Masai Mara, the zebra, topi and wildebeest were gathered on the sides of the river. However, the chill of the morning breeze kept our migratory animals agitated, with some rather participating in tag and racing games. The echo of their hooves carried across the plains, and the crocs were waiting in anticipation. On the horizon, a courtship of Maasai ostriches was on show. We watched as their wings flapped and heads bobbed in the breeze. It was a fascinating addition to our digital safari. Meanwhile, down south, most of the animals used the morning winds to their advantage. In Juma, Lalamba, the leopard princess, stalked unnoticed through the high grasses of the territory marked out for her by her mother, eventually finding a well-hidden spot to stake out her next kill. In Pinda, the vultures sat high up with their beaks at the ready to catch any smells of prey wafting in the breeze. Further in the long grasslands was a herd of African buffalo grazing, with one of the females shedding her fur, getting ready for the warm weather to follow. On the other side of Pinda, the lions used the wind to mask their movements as they laid in wait at the waterhole. At Ngala, after a long game of wait and tease, the mating rituals with these big cats reignited. Join us every day at 4:30 GMT on CGTN digital platforms for your very own virtual safari through the African wild.
Coming up in sports. Uganda mulls restarting sporting activities without fans.